everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Naruto Fusion System, Chapter 58-63, Rin's Reputation. 1169 words. On the 10th day after Rin arrived at the front line, he had just finished leaving the field hospital and was preparing to head toward the battlefield again. Earlier, he had overheard some wounded shinobi mention that the small-scale clashes on the front lines today were especially intense. The moment he heard that, it was like weeds started growing in his heart. He hurriedly finished treating all the wounded before immediately leaving the field hospital. Sure enough, roughly a dozen kilometers ahead, the sounds of killing echoed endlessly throughout the battlefield. From time to time, explosions burst into the air. Elsewhere, giant trees collapsed one after another. This battlefield was completely different from the massive group warfare from before. Sunagakure wasn't launching large-scale assaults against Konoha's defensive line. Instead, both sides were carrying out assassinations and counter-assassinations within the vast forest between them. The minimum combat unit participating in this kind of battle was usually one Jonin leading 3 Chunin. Independent Chunin squads simply couldn't survive this sort of brutal close-quarters killing field. Although the scale wasn't as visually overwhelming as the previous large-scale battle, the daily casualty count was actually even higher than during full frontal warfare. Every time a wounded shinobi was carried back from the battlefield, Konoha immediately dispatched another squad to replace them and maintain combat strength at the front. Rin had already grown accustomed to this scene over the past few days. Honestly speaking, the number of people he saved far exceeded the number he personally killed. That was why, the moment Rin arrived at the front line, many shinobi respectfully nodded toward him. If not for the fact that he was still too young and held no formal command position, many of them would probably have knelt on one knee out of gratitude. Uncle Shinsuin, what's the situation today? Did the Sand Shinobi take the wrong medicine or something? Why are they fighting so fiercely? Rin asked the frontline commander, Hada Shinsuin. No idea, Hada Shinsuin replied with a frown. We captured a Chunin earlier, but that guy didn't know anything useful at all. And we haven't managed to capture any Jonin yet. So for now, all we can do is continue grinding each other down like this. Then I'll go capture a Jonin for you, Rin casually said. The moment those words left his mouth, Hada Shinsuin nearly jumped in fright. Young Master Rin, absolutely not. Jonin aren't easy to capture alive. Once they realize they're about to be taken prisoner, they'll usually attempt to die together with the enemy. You absolutely can't take that kind of risk. Hada Shinsuin hurriedly tried to stop him. He genuinely feared something might happen to Rin. Although Rin's performance over the past several days had already convinced everyone that he was extremely powerful, Rin rarely used large-scale ninjutsu, or would release publicly. Most of the time, he only relied on the Flying Thunder God technique and taijutsu. So in Hada Shinsuin's eyes, Rin was probably only somewhat stronger than an ordinary Jonin. At most, elite Jonin level. If Rin encountered danger while trying to capture an enemy Jonin alive, Hada Shinsuin wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. After all, Rin was officially classified as a medical shinobi assisting with treatment duties, not frontline combat personnel. And over the past few days, the number of shinobi saved or helped by Rin had already exceeded 1,000 people. That was practically 1/3 of the entire camp. If Rin got injured because of something, Hada Shinsuin said, even if Orochimaru didn't come looking for trouble, the rest of the camp definitely would. Relax, Uncle Shinsuin. It'll be fine. I'm actually very strong, you know. Otherwise, do you think Uncle Snake would let me run around so freely? Rin replied carelessly. After all, if he truly wanted to leave, Sunagakure really had no way to stop him. Watching Rin disappear with a body flicker technique, Hada Shinsuin could only sigh helplessly and pray that nothing happened to him. After entering the forest, Rin began secretly scattering Flying Thunder God kunai everywhere as he moved. Tree tops, rock crevices, anywhere suitable for hiding a marked kunai, he used every possible location. Because he had a strange feeling that something about today was off. So naturally, it was better to prepare additional escape routes in advance. Better safe than sorry. Before long, Rin discovered a Sunagakure squad currently fighting against a Konoha squad. Both sides appeared evenly matched. However, Rin quickly noticed something unusual. Sunagakure's logistics seemed to be having issues. One of Konoha's Chunin had already used 2 explosive tags during the fight. Meanwhile, Sunagakure's Chunin had only thrown a handful of shuriken. After observing for 2 minutes, Rin suddenly exploded into action. The moment the Sunagakure Jonin finished using a ninjutsu, and hadn't yet recovered, Rin instantly struck. Would release, tree bind eternal burial. The Sand Jonin was immediately restrained by giant trees. Then Rin rushed forward and punched out all of the man's teeth in one blow. This was specifically to prevent hidden poison capsules from being concealed inside his mouth for suicide purposes. Immediately afterward, Rin used sealing techniques to completely suppress both the Jonin's chakra and mobility. Now, even suicide was impossible. By the time Rin finished all of this, the Konoha Jonin had already killed the remaining 3 Chunin. Be careful today. Sunagakure probably has some kind of scheme planned. Don't pursue too deeply, Rin warned before disappearing instantly with the Flying Thunder God technique again. The Konoha squad, completely overwhelmed by this sudden stroke of fortune, didn't even get the chance to properly thank him before Rin vanished. Captain, that was the Flying Thunder God technique just now, right? It's unbelievably fast. One of the Chunin said enviously. Yeah, that was the Flying Thunder God technique. But stop dreaming about learning it yourselves. Unless you're a once-in-a-generation genius with space-time affinity, it's impossible to master, the Jonin replied knowingly. At this moment, Rin had already returned to Konoha's frontline defense. Uncle Shinsuin, I brought back a Jonin. I already sealed both his chakra and movement ability. You can send him for interrogation now. I'm leaving again. After casually tossing the captured Sand Jonin onto the ground, Rin disappeared once more. Hada Shinsuin stared blankly at the unconscious Sand Jonin on the ground, his brain momentarily unable to process what had just happened. Take him to the interrogation division, Hada Shinsuin finally ordered. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, Rin had already begun darting wildly throughout the forest battlefield. He rarely directly killed Sand Shinobi himself. His primary role was rescue support. Whenever he noticed a Konoha squad falling into danger, he would immediately rush over to help them escape. Half an hour later, intelligence regarding Rin's movements had already been delivered onto Chiyo's desk. The encirclement plan begins now, Chiyo immediately ordered after reading the report. At that moment, a trap specifically targeting Rin officially began unfolding. To read 120+ advanced chapters, head over to my Patreon. com/boldverse chapter 59, mental interrogation 1108 words. This is already close to our defensive line. If you head back from here, you'll reach camp soon enough. Although I already treated your injuries, you lost too much blood, so you still need several days of rest. Rin used the Flying Thunder God technique to bring the rescued shinobi close to Konoha's defense line before giving him a few instructions. Thank you, young Master Rin. You've already saved my life twice. If I survive until the end of the war, I'll definitely join under your command, the rescued shinobi said respectfully. Then make sure you survive first. I'm leaving. Good luck. Rin simply smiled and disappeared again. Honestly, he never cared much about building subordinates or followers. The only reason he said those words was because he didn't want to crush the man's fighting spirit. After all, people in the Naruto world loved walking down extreme emotional paths. Every few days, someone started questioning the meaning of their existence or spiraling into some dramatic emotional crisis. It was honestly exhausting. Meanwhile, inside Konoha's camp, the interrogation division was currently questioning the captured Sand Jonin. Captain, this guy refuses to speak no matter what we do. Should we use mental interrogation? One of the interrogation shinobi asked while frowning. We can only try that now. The interrogation captain looked helplessly at the blood-covered Sand Jonin. The interrogation division hated opponents like this the most. People who weren't afraid of death and possessed iron-like willpower. Genjutsu guidance was ineffective. Torture was useless. Last chance. If you still refuse to speak, we'll be forced to use mental interrogation. You should know exactly what mental interrogation means, right? The captain asked as he stepped into the room. The Sand Jonin's face was covered in blood, and his eyes overflowed with hatred. Yet after seeing the interrogation captain, he suddenly started laughing. How long have you been interrogating me? The Sand Jonin asked with a savage grin while blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Half an hour. You're a qualified shinobi. In these 30 minutes, we used 13 different torture methods, yet you still refuse to speak, the captain replied. But after hearing that answer, the Sand Jonin suddenly burst into loud laughter. Ha 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 ha. Half an hour. Ha 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 ha. That should be enough time already. The Sand Jonin laughed like a madman. The captain immediately frowned. Half an hour. That meant the Sand Shinobi had intentionally delayed them for exactly this amount of time. In other words, Sunagakure had likely been carrying out some kind of operation during these 30 minutes. But today's Sand Shinobi movements clearly weren't aimed at attacking Konoha's defensive line. That meant they had another objective entirely. And this half-hour timing started from the moment the Jonin was captured. So whatever operation they were carrying out had likely only begun around 30 minutes ago. But one thing still bothered the captain. Why specifically 30 minutes? Why not 40 minutes? Or an hour? Did this Sand Jonin begin moving precisely when the operation started? That still didn't fully make sense. Then what exactly did these 30 minutes represent? Begin mental interrogation immediately. The captain's expression suddenly darkened. He had a very bad feeling now. So he immediately decided to stop wasting time speaking. Yes, Captain. 5 interrogation shinobi instantly surrounded the Sand Jonin. Each stood at equal distance from one another, forming the 5 points of a pentagram. Then they simultaneously formed hand seals. Interrogation technique, mental interrogation. In an instant, all 5 interrogation shinobi and the Sand Jonin entered a spiritual world together. Each interrogator stood atop a separate platform. Meanwhile, the Sand Jonin himself was bound tightly by countless chains. Especially around his head, where 5 large chains connected directly to him. What is Sunagakure's plan today? The captain demanded. You'll never know. Even if you do learn it now, it's already too late. Aha! The moment the Sand Jonin answered, the captain instantly changed his hand seals. The 5 chains restraining the Sand Jonin's had immediately tightened violently. The Sand Shinobi screamed in agony. At the same time, the expressions of all 5 interrogators changed as well. Mental interrogation directly connected their spirits together with the target. That meant whenever the Sand Jonin suffered spiritual damage, they would suffer part of that pain too. Fortunately, the burden was split among all 5 of them. So although painful, it remained bearable. I'll ask again. What is your plan? The captain demanded after stopping the torture temporarily. Won't say anything. Even if I die. The Sand Jonin's consciousness had already begun collapsing, yet he still refused to speak. The captain formed seals again. The chains instantly tightened once more. 5 minutes later, the Sand Jonin's spirit was already on the verge of complete collapse. One more round of mental torture would probably kill him entirely. Your mission succeeded. You are a hero of Sunagakure. Suddenly, the interrogation captain completely changed his tone and spoke respectfully instead. Succeeded. Uzumaki Rin is dead. That's wonderful. The Sand Jonin muttered brokenly. Then his spiritual will completely collapsed. At that moment, the captain's expression changed drastically. The instant they exited the mental world, he immediately rushed outside. Only one thought remained in his mind now: he had to immediately inform Orochimaru. Tsunagekyu's true objective was to surround and kill Rin. However, before the captain could even reach Orochimaru's tent, he suddenly saw the distant battlefield erupt into a massive sandstorm barrier. Endless yellow sand surged upward beneath violent winds, forming a gigantic dome that completely covered the battlefield. The captain's face instantly turned pale. It was already too late. "Young Master Rin, please don't let anything happen to you." Meanwhile, the entire Konoha camp was stunned. Nobody understood what madness had possessed Tsunagakure to create such a massive disturbance. Time returned to several minutes earlier. Rin had just finished escorting another rescued shinobi back to Konoha's defensive line before using the Flying Thunder God technique to return deep into the battlefield once more. However, before he even traveled very far, he suddenly heard the roar of ninjutsu explosions and saw flames erupting nearby. The hell is wrong with Tsunagakure today? Did they take drugs or get bitten by dogs or something? Rin cursed while rushing toward the source of the battle. What he saw was yet another Konoha squad being surrounded by a large group of sand shinobi. He had already encountered scenes like this multiple times today. If he hadn't acted quickly every single time, Konoha would definitely have suffered enormous losses. To read 120+ advanced chapters, head over to my patreon.com/boldverse chapter 60. Wind 1196 words. Rin instantly used the Flying Thunder God technique to appear beside a Konoha Jonin, blocking an incoming Sand Shinobi attack for him before immediately forming hand seals. Wind release, pressure damage. A violent hurricane instantly erupted outward, directly disrupting the Sand Shinobi's attack rhythm and forcing them to retreat to avoid the raging winds. "Where's the rest of your squad?" Rin asked. "They're all dead. I'm the only one left." Although the Konoha Jonin smiled after seeing Rin, the expression looked uglier than crying. "Let me heal your injuries first." Rin created a wood clone to treat the Jonin, while his main body remained on guard against the surrounding Sand Shinobi. But strangely enough, those Sand Shinobi didn't continue attacking. Instead, they all suddenly retreated. "What the hell, what's going on? Don't tell me I've already reached Senior Brother Minato's future level, where Tsunagakure has standing orders to retreat immediately upon encountering me. That shouldn't be possible yet, right?" At the very least, he hadn't yet beaten Tsunagakure badly enough to earn that kind of reputation. He definitely hadn't achieved something ridiculous like instantly slaughtering 50 Jonin in one move either. There was no way Tsunagakure would issue such absurd orders already. No matter what, this was still a good thing. At least it saved trouble. After retreating, the Sand Shinobi immediately rushed toward another location at top speed. More than 50 Sand Shinobi had already gathered there. One of them carried an enormous scroll on his back. "Uzumaki Rin has entered the ambush zone. He's currently healing a Konoha shinobi." "Understood." The Sand Shinobi carrying the giant scroll immediately placed it onto the ground before forming hand seals and slamming his hand onto it. At the exact same moment, 33 other Sand Shinobi scattered across various locations throughout the battlefield did the same thing. Each of them also carried giant scrolls. The densely packed formulas and seals engraved across the scrolls immediately began glowing yellow as all 33 shinobi performed synchronized hand seals. Upon seeing the seals activate, 30 shinobi from each location stepped forward simultaneously and began pouring chakra into the scrolls according to prearranged formation positions. When every single formula on the scrolls fully lit up, all 33 leading shinobi simultaneously changed their hand seals again. After completing 36 consecutive seals, they all roared together, "Wind Sand Burial Barrier." 5 minutes later, the Konoha Jonin's injuries had already been fully treated. Just as Rin prepared to bring him back to the defensive line using the Flying Thunder God technique, the entire sky suddenly became covered in endless yellow sand. "What the hell is this?" Rin stared upward at the yellow sand filling the heavens. "Don't tell me there's a sandstorm here too. Or did some giant hurricane from the land of wind blow all this sand over here?" Although Rin joked casually, he knew very well that this was definitely Sunagaker's doing. And it absolutely had something to do with their bizarre behavior today. This was obviously some kind of trap. Whatever. I'll leave the headache to Uncle Snake later. Let's head back first. Rin grabbed the Konoha Jonin and attempted to sense the flying Thunder God marker near Konoha's defensive line. However, 10 seconds later, Rin helplessly released the Jonin and sighed. Looks like we can't go back anymore. Today's entire operation from Sunagaker was probably designed specifically to kill me. I can't sense any of my flying Thunder God markers outside anymore. Looks like they prepared this barrier specifically to stop me from escaping. Rin looked toward the Jonin. You should leave first and hide somewhere far away. Your combat strength is already mostly gone right now. If a real fight starts later, I won't have time to protect you. Young Master Rin, you saved my life. Even if I die, I won't abandon you and run away. The Konoha Jonin shook his head firmly. After all, Rin had just saved him moments ago. And now Rin himself was being surrounded. How could he possibly flee alone? Hearing that, Rin felt both irritated and touched at the same time. Left with no other choice, Rin immediately used the Flying Thunder God technique again, bringing the Jonin to the marker closest to Konoha's defensive line within the barrier. The marker was hidden high within a giant tree. 300 meters ahead, the edge of the wind-sand burial barrier could clearly be seen. Hide carefully here. Later, I'll find a way to destroy this barrier. The moment it breaks, immediately rush back to Konoha's camp at full speed and inform Uncle Snake that he doesn't need to worry about me. Tell him to immediately lead forces to attack Sunagaker's camp instead. Understood. Young Master Rin, you alone. The Jonin instantly became anxious, but Rin directly interrupted him. Remember this carefully. This is an order. All of Sunagaker's combat forces have already been drawn here. This is the perfect opportunity to attack their camp. Do not delay the battle plan. That is an order. Rin's expression turned serious. Yes, young Master Rin. Please be careful. Hide yourself properly. And remember, if someone discovers you, grab this Flying Thunder God kunai and run immediately. Don't stay and fight. After speaking, Rin instantly used the Flying Thunder God technique to return to his previous location. Since Sunagaker's target was him specifically, they obviously knew he would return there. So all Rin needed to do now was wait. Closing his eyes, Rin silently sensed the number of Flying Thunder God markers remaining inside the barrier. Although he could no longer teleport outside the barrier, the Flying Thunder God technique still functioned normally within the barrier itself. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long. Very quickly, Chiyo arrived before him while leading an enormous group of Sunagaker elite shinobi. Rin glanced over the crowd. Good lord. Over 100 people. And every single one of them was at least Jonin level. Not a single weakling among them. This lineup was genuinely terrifying. Granny Chiyo, just to kill me alone, you actually mobilized this much manpower. Aren't you worried Uncle Snake will take advantage of this and wipe out Sunagaker's camp instead? If you fail to kill me and lose your camp at the same time, you'll really suffer, Rin said with a grin. Honestly speaking, although Chiyo was already over 50 years old at this point, she still looked far younger than she did later in the original story. So when Rin called her Granny, even the corner of her eye twitched. You don't need to concern yourself with Sunagaker's camp. Right now, your space-time ninjutsu can no longer allow you to escape this barrier. If you surrender, I can still spare your life, Chiyo said coldly. No thanks. Honestly, I'm more interested in seeing just how far all of you together can push me. Rin slowly cracked his neck. It's been a long time since I fought seriously with everything I have. Today is the perfect chance to test myself. Not only did Rin show absolutely no fear, he actually looked excited instead. To read 120+ advanced chapters, head over to my Patreon.com/boldverse. Chapter 61. Hell Lightning 12:11 words. Rin knew very clearly that winning this fight outright was impossible. After all, the enemy had more than 100 Jonin-level shinobi. But at the same time, they also had no chance of truly trapping him here. Right now, Rin simply wanted a proper battle. He wanted to know exactly how long he could survive against the siege of over 100 elite shinobi. Earth Release, Iron Prison. Water Release, Great Waterfall Technique. Rin rapidly formed hand seals and immediately released 2 large-scale ninjutsu. However, these techniques weren't meant to injure anyone. They were purely for altering the battlefield environment. The Iron Prison technique created an enormous surrounding wall whose only purpose was to trap the floodwaters produced by the Great Waterfall technique. In an instant, the entire area transformed into a massive lake. Earth Release, Multiple Earth-style walls. Faced with Rin's massive battlefield-scale ninjutsu, the Sand Shinobi could only respond with Earth Release defensive techniques. By the time the water finally stabilized, the entire battlefield had already become a vast sea-like environment. Seeing this, Chiyo immediately ordered people to destroy the surrounding walls. For puppet masters, fighting in this kind of flooded battlefield was absolutely terrible. Water Release, Exploding Water Shockwave. Several Sand Shinobi capable of using Water Release immediately launched a counterattack toward Rin. Trying to compete with me in Water Release. You people aren't qualified. Come at me together. After speaking, Rin instantly formed hand seals again. Water Release, Rain Formation. Countless water streams shot into the sky before transforming into enormous water bullets raining down over the battlefield. The attack directly covered every Sand Shinobi present. Wind Release, Pressure Damage. Water Release, Water Formation Wall. The Sand Shinobi hurriedly defended or dodged the overwhelming rain of water shells while simultaneously launching counterattacks of their own. Now this is more like it. Seeing the Sand Shinobi coordinate together and forcibly carve a path through the falling water bullets using combined ninjutsu, Rin shouted excitedly before charging forward. His arms and fists instantly transformed into metal. Monstrous strength activated at full power. Rin directly smashed apart incoming ninjutsu with his bare fists, before engaging the approaching Sand Shinobi in taijutsu combat. Unfortunately for them, Tsunagekyure's taijutsu was already somewhat inferior compared to Kumogakyure and Iwagakure. Compared to Rin, who possessed both Tsunade's monstrous strength and full-body metallization, the gap became even larger. And so, Rin completely abandoned ninjutsu for the moment. He decided to enjoy some close-quarters combat first. He intentionally took a punch from a Sand Shinobi behind him using his back as bait, then immediately used the opening to blast the shinobi in front of him flying. Afterward, he spun around with a leaf hurricane kick. In just this short period, Rin had already sent countless Sand Shinobi flying. Yet the surrounding enemies never seemed to decrease. The moment he kicked away the enemies behind him, 2 more attacked from the side. After blasting those 2 away, 4 more appeared from every direction. Painful Heaven Foot. The water surface beneath Rin instantly collapsed downward under the force of his kick. Massive waves exploded outward as a shockwave, temporarily blasting back the surrounding Sand Shinobi. At this point, Rin finally realized something. This wasn't working. Although he enjoyed brutal close-range combat, the enemy simply had too many people. He was fighting too passively. And none of them were individually strong enough to truly challenge him evenly. This kind of battle wasn't satisfying at all. You people want to rely on numbers. Unfortunately, the thing I fear least is being outnumbered. Multiple shadow clone technique. Dozens of Rins instantly appeared around the battlefield. We're done comparing taijutsu. Honestly, your taijutsu is terrible. Now let's compare ninjutsu instead. Dozens of Rins simultaneously began forming hand seals. The scene alone was incredibly shocking. Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. Water Release, Heavenly Cry. Water Release, Rain Formation. Water Release, Water Barrage Technique. Water Release, Wild Water Wave. Rin and all his shadow clones completed their seals at astonishing speed. In an instant, the water level beneath everyone's feet dropped by more than 2 meters. All of that water had been forcibly drawn upward into the sky by Rin's water release. Countless water bullets, water dragons, water cannons, and ice Sanban rained down toward the sand shinobi from every direction. The scale was absolutely overwhelming. Dodging was practically impossible. Seeing this, the sand shinobi immediately responded with their own large-scale ninjutsu. If they didn't block Rin's attack, they would be completely overwhelmed. Fire Release, Hard Work. Wind Release, Vacuum Serial Slashes. Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. Earth Release, Earth Flow Rampart. For a moment, countless ninjutsu collided together across the battlefield. Shockwaves exploded everywhere. Water splashed violently. Mist covered the area. Fire illuminated the darkness. At this moment, nobody could clearly see anything anymore. And this was exactly what Rin wanted. Not only did he refuse to dispel his shadow clones, he and every single clone immediately began forming hand seals again. This time, however, they weren't using water release anymore. Instead, they used the lightning release Rin had never publicly revealed before. After all the shadow clones completed their seals, they simultaneously slammed their hands onto the water surface. Lightning Release, Earth Walk. At the same moment the clones activated their technique, Rin himself also finished his own seals. Terrifying lightning exploded from both his hands as he slammed them violently into the water. Lightning Release, Hell Lightning. Countless lightning serpents erupted across the battlefield. Centered around Rin, endless arcs of lightning spread outward over the water surface. Every lightning serpent was as thick as a thumb. Because Rin completed all of his hand seals hidden beneath the cover of dense mist, the sand shinobi had absolutely no preparation whatsoever. Even Chiyo, despite knowing much of Rin's intelligence, had never heard that he possessed lightning release. And so Sunagakure suffered horribly. The sand shinobi had only just managed to block Rin's water release attacks. Before they could even launch their counterattack, the entire battlefield was instantly swept by a sea of lightning. The sand shinobi who used water release defensively suffered the worst. The battlefield was now filled with mist and moisture everywhere. Once the lightning entered the mist, it no longer remained limited to the water surface. The entire battlefield became filled with crackling electric currents. After unleashing this attack, Rin himself began breathing heavily. Dozens of shadow clones simultaneously casting large-scale ninjutsu had completely drained his chakra reserves. This was the first time Rin had ever experienced total chakra exhaustion. The feeling was absolutely awful. It felt like every ounce of strength had been sucked out of his body. However, his enemies had suffered even more. Out of the original 100+ sand shinobi, excluding the dozen already crippled earlier by Rin's monstrous strength, this single attack had directly eliminated nearly half of the remaining combat force. Although not many died outright, most of them completely lost their ability to continue fighting. As the smoke and mist finally dispersed, Rin saw dozens of injured sand shinobi either being supported by teammates or laid against distant trees. Meanwhile, only around 50 people still retained full combat capability. To read 120+ advanced chapters, head over to my patreon.com/boldverse. Chapter 62, Release of the Een Seal. 12 words. I truly underestimated you. To think you could unleash an attack of that level. That lightning release technique just now, you developed it yourself, didn't you? As expected of a genius. Although Chiyo looked grim, there was undeniable admiration in her eyes. However, your chakra should already be exhausted by now. So surrendering would be the wiser choice. Honestly, I really don't want to personally kill a genius like you. But if we let you continue growing, you'll become another Hashirama Senju. Chiyo genuinely understood now just how terrifying Rin was. From the very beginning they had been led around entirely by him. At first, including Chiyo herself, Everyone believed Rin had created such an enormous amount of water purely to unleash large-scale water release techniques. Only after the lightning release attack erupted did she finally realize the truth. From beginning to end, Rin had never intended to use water release to kill them. The water had only been created to maximize the power of his lightning release. Everything before had merely been preparation. Actually, everything you've been saying was just a stall for time, so the water beneath our feet could drain away. At the same time, your subordinates also need time to recover. Being paralyzed in both muscles and nerves doesn't feel very good, right? Rin calmly looked down at the rapidly receding water level beneath the battlefield. Clearly, the iron prison walls had already been destroyed. But he wasn't surprised at all. After all, he had already completed the Hell Lightning attack. Whether water remained now no longer mattered much. But who told you my chakra was exhausted? Did I personally tell you that? Hearing this, Chiyo narrowed her eyes slightly. Even if your chakra reserves are enormous, you used far too many techniques in a very short amount of time. Your chakra simply couldn't possibly recover that quickly. So I estimate you currently have at most 10% remaining. Even after Rin exposed her stalling tactics, Chiyo showed no embarrassment whatsoever. Because none of that mattered anymore. Right now, Rin supposedly had almost no chakra left. Meanwhile, their side still had over 50 combat-capable shinobi remaining. And she herself hadn't even truly entered the battle yet. Under these circumstances there was absolutely no way Rin could escape. However, at that exact moment, everyone suddenly felt the wind-sand barrier violently tremble once. And that single tremor instantly changed Chiyo's expression. Once the barrier broke without the spatial lockdown, Rin would immediately escape using the Flying Thunder God technique. If that happened, then today's enormous operation to surround and kill Rin would become a complete waste. And after today, trying to trap Rin again like this would be practically impossible. Meanwhile, the moment Rin sensed the disturbance in the barrier, he immediately understood. Uncle Snake has started making his move. And he guessed correctly. Outside the barrier, Orochimaru was currently leading a large force in a direct assault against the barrier. Even after excluding the sand shinobi maintaining the barrier, and those surrounding Rin inside, Sunagakure still retained a considerable amount of combat power outside. Those forces were desperately holding back Orochimaru's troops. However, without another Kage-level fighter present to restrain him, nobody there could truly stop Orochimaru. And the earlier tremor in the barrier had been caused by Orochimaru summoning Manda to smash directly into it. You better hold on. Orochimaru stared at the barely trembling barrier after Manda's massive impact and muttered darkly. Then he suddenly leapt from Manda's head and unleashed his strongest offensive ninjutsu. Fire release, Great Flame Flower. 3 fireballs erupted from Orochimaru's mouth before instantly expanding into gigantic meteor-like infernos that slammed violently into the barrier. The sand-covered barrier began trembling violently after being struck. Ripples spread across its surface like waves on water, making it appear as though it would shatter at any moment. Yet after shaking intensely for several moments, the barrier slowly stabilized once more. The flowing sand resumed its rotation again. Seeing this, frustration appeared in Orochimaru's eyes. Against this kind of large-scale barrier technique, even his strongest attacks were ineffective. Which meant the only remaining solution was to gather a massive number of shinobi and slowly break it through combined force. But because of this, Orochimaru became even more dissatisfied with his own strength. His obsession with obtaining greater power deepened once again. Still, now was not the time to think about such things. The priority was defeating Sunagakure, breaking the barrier, and rescuing Rin. During the Second Shinobi World War, due to various circumstances, Nawaki had died on Orochimaru's battlefield. If Rin were to die here as well, he truly wouldn't know how to face Tsunade anymore. Thinking this, Orochimaru stopped wasting chakra attacking the barrier, and instead began slaughtering Sand Shinobi at maximum speed. However, because of Orochimaru's assault outside, Chiyo realized they were running out of time. And so she finally stopped delaying. White secret technique, Chikamatsu 10 puppets. The moment Chiyo moved, she directly unleashed her strongest combat technique. At the same time, the surrounding sand shinobi also launched another wave of ninjutsu attacks. Their objective was simple: continue exhausting Rin's chakra until he had nothing left. Without chakra, death would become inevitable. Facing the assault of the Chikamatsu 10 puppets combined with the barrage of sand shinobi techniques, Rin finally decided to release the seal he had hidden for years. Release. The instant the seal opened, an incomparably massive flood of chakra and life energy stored over 5 to 6 years erupted into Rin's body. His previously depleted chakra reserves instantly refilled completely. At the same time, the terrifying life energy triggered violent changes within his yang release power, causing it to strengthen at astonishing speed. Yet even that wasn't enough. The sheer amount of chakra and life force Rin had accumulated over the years was simply too enormous. Green chakra flames instantly erupted around his body, resembling the aura of someone opening the Might Guy 8 gates. Meanwhile, the surrounding plants rapidly began growing after absorbing the overflowing life energy leaking from Rin's body. Looking at the incoming wave of attacks, Rin instantly broke through the sound barrier using his metallization ability, and retreated rapidly into an open area behind him. After seeing Rin's chakra suddenly return to full strength, while simultaneously releasing such horrifying life energy, even Chiyo was stunned. They had fought desperately for so long just to exhaust his chakra. And now in a single instant it was completely restored. How were they supposed to continue fighting like this? And Chiyo hadn't forgotten something extremely important. Up until now Rin still hadn't used would release seriously. Aren't you the one who said I would become the next Hashirama Senju? Rin slowly looked toward Chiyo. Then let me show you something. Help me see exactly how far my would release still is from Hashirama Senju's. After speaking, Rin immediately began forming hand seals. Would release, deep forest emergence. This time, Rin directly poured all the life energy he had accumulated over the years into the technique. After all, he couldn't absorb any more of it anyway. Keeping it stored would only be a waste. To read 120 plus advanced chapters, head over to my patreon.com/boldverse chapter 63, 600 billion lion seal 1135 words. Even Rin himself hadn't expected the power of this wave of deep forest emergence to become so terrifying. Endless trees erupted from beneath the earth and began growing madly. It no longer looked like trees growing, it looked like weeds exploding across the battlefield. The entire interior of the wind sand burial barrier was almost completely filled by the expanding forest. And this still wasn't the end. The crazily growing trees continued expanding even after touching the barrier itself. Although the rotating sand constantly shredded the trees apart, new ones continued growing endlessly. It was as though the forest absolutely intended to tear the barrier open by force. Meanwhile, Chiyo frantically controlled the Chikamatsu 10 puppets to slash apart the surrounding trees. But no matter how fast she destroyed them, the forest grew even faster. Chikamatsu 10 puppets, 3 treasures suction crush. Chiyo suddenly changed her hand seals. 3 of the 10 puppets instantly formed a triangular formation, while opening their mechanisms marked with the characters. A terrifying tornado immediately erupted from the 3 puppets. The violent storm swept up enormous amounts of trees before compressing them together at the center of the formation into an incredibly dense mass. Then, with a movement of Chiyo's fingers, the compressed mass exploded outward like a miniature-tailed beast bomb. The instant it slammed into the forest sea, an enormous shockwave erupted violently across the battlefield. Even Rin was startled by this attack. Not because of its raw power but because of the terrifying coordination technique between the 3 puppets. Although Rin already knew the Chikamatsu 10 puppets were extremely powerful, by the time Chiyo appeared in the original story, she was already over 70 years old. At that age, she clearly couldn't fully display the true strength of those puppets anymore. Which meant the true power of the Chikamatsu 10 puppets had always remained a mystery throughout Naruto. And now seeing just a 3-puppet combination unleash something this terrifying, Rin genuinely couldn't even imagine how monstrous a full 10-puppet combination technique would become. Granny Chiyo, attacks like that aren't enough. Deep forest emergence isn't some one-time ninjutsu. Even if you destroy the trees around you, you still can't stop the technique itself. Now keep growing. The moment Rin shouted, countless trees instantly exploded upward around Chio again, before wildly wrapping toward her position. At that exact moment, Rin suddenly heard a cracking sound. Looking upward, he saw that the yellow sand barrier above them had begun splitting apart. At this point, the continuously circulating sandstorm had already been completely restrained by the endlessly growing forest. Without the movement of the sand, the wind-sand barrier immediately became unstable. And with the deep forest emergence continuously expanding and pressing outward, the barrier could no longer endure the pressure. The sand-filled sky instantly exploded outward. The barrier completely lost its structure and finally transformed into an actual sandstorm. Rin suddenly narrowed his eyes. These yellow sands actually contain a special magnetic metal. The moment he sensed the metallic content hidden within the sand, Rin instantly understood why the barrier had been able to interfere with his Flying Thunder God technique. Magnetism. An unbelievably massive magnetic field. Although Rin had been terrible at physics in his previous life, he still knew that extremely powerful magnetic restraints could affect spatial stability. These magnetic yellow sands were probably condensed using the chakra of Shikaku. Otherwise, they could never possess magnetic properties this strong, nor form such an enormous magnetic field. Then Rin suddenly grinned. But now all of this belongs to me instead. Sunagakure really are good people. This is basically giving me a pillow right when I'm getting sleepy. After speaking, Rin instantly entered full metallized form. Endless magnetic yellow sand immediately began converging toward him. Meanwhile, after the barrier shattered, Orochimaru immediately rushed into the battlefield interior. However, the moment Orochimaru passed through the storm of yellow sand, he saw countless giant trees still slowly growing throughout the battlefield. And the moment he landed atop one of them, the surrounding trees suddenly became extremely aggressive, wildly wrapping toward him, as though they had taken stimulants. This is deep forest emergence. Looks like Rin is fine. Seeing this scene, Orochimaru finally relaxed. However, while avoiding the encroaching trees, he also couldn't help feeling deeply envious of such power. He had unleashed his strongest techniques earlier, and still failed to damage the barrier. Yet the Rin he had worried so much about had directly shattered the barrier using deep forest emergence alone. This only deepened Orochimaru's obsession with bloodline limits. And it also marked the beginning of his genuine interest in researching them seriously. If Rin ever learned that his actions caused Orochimaru to begin studying bloodline limits years earlier than normal, even he probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. By the time Orochimaru finally reached Rin's location, he saw Rin floating in midair, while absorbing endless amounts of yellow sand. "Uncle Snake, you're here." The moment Rin noticed Orochimaru, he immediately greeted him casually. "Looks like not only did Sunagakure fail to do anything to you, they even ended up helping you grow stronger again." Orochimaru looked toward the floating Rin absorbing magnetic sand and revealed his trademark smile. "Not exactly stronger. But this magnetic sand metal is definitely good stuff. After returning, I'm planning to forge a weapon out of it. I'll call it..." Rin grinned. "Senbonzakura. When the time comes, I won't need to fear group battles anymore." Rin had absolutely no interest in fighting like Gaara by directly manipulating sand everywhere. Even though what he controlled wasn't ordinary sand but metallic particles, visually it still looked similar. So instead he wanted to forge all this metal into a blade. A weapon capable of splitting apart like Senbonzakura, transforming into endless cherry blossom-like blades during large-scale combat. Not only would it look vastly cooler, its destructive power would also become terrifying. And just as Rin and Orochimaru were speaking, an angry voice suddenly echoed across the battlefield. "White secret technique, Chikamatsu 10 puppets, 1,000 blade city split." In the next instant countless blades erupted like a massive tornado. The very first thought that flashed through Rin's mind was, "Holy shit, that's basically Blade Storm." After everything finally calmed down, the two of them saw Chiyo standing there while breathing heavily. Around her stood the Chikamatsu 10 puppets, their hidden weapon mechanisms still exposed. Granny Chiyo, the barrier's already gone. You still want to keep fighting? Rin looked at Chiyo's expression helplessly. If I can't keep you here, then I'll leave Orochimaru behind instead. After speaking, Chiyo immediately began forming hand seals again. 600 billion lion seal. Lion roar sea burial. To read 120+ advanced chapters, head over to my patreon.com/boldverse. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.